Sup everybody, this is Karak with ACG, and it is always my continuing adventure to deliver to you reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or full of sponsored bullcrap. Sit back for a tale of wizarding worlds in the turn-based form that is Rogue Wizards, which sounds a little bit like a lunchtime dungeon master got his classes mixed up. It's like Mage Fighters, Rogue Wizards, or Sandwich Burritos, because what you have here is a turn-based random dungeon battling game, where you take your merry band, and sometimes just your merry self, and enter dungeons, clean out bad guys, and take in officially the largest amount of loot I have ever seen in a game like this. How these guys don't have a bad case of shopper's back, I'm never gonna know. So let's see how this dungeon crawling town building Rogue Wizards game from Spellbind Studios does, shall we? The title will be available September 27th for $14.99 on Steam. As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So here's the review for Rogue Wizards, the world's worst video game draw distance, absentee mayors, and joining up with the folks who seem to spend an inordinate amount of time just standing in dungeons waiting for you. Graphics are up first. This is certainly a unique game. The moment you boot the game, you're going to see a mix of cartoon aesthetics with a world drawing in front of you in tile format. Now, I have to say at first I was very bothered by the presentation as a whole, especially when it came to the game world's view, but its usefulness in battle by using range and escaping out of monsters' visions, and sometimes out of their desire to smoke you and eat you over the world's first goblin form and grill, it really goes a long ways to offset that oddness. Now, I can see this bothering some people and not being noticed by others. For me, it made attention paramount, as I had to look at both the main screen and keep an eye on the minimap to make sure I didn't miss something along the way, like a one-tiled corridor. But in the end, the worldview itself ended up winning me over, because graphics of everything else is actually very good, and while it's not flinging particle systems around the worlds like the last AAA games, it does well with what it has. Magic fireballs leave fires all over the maps, ice freezes enemies into frosty white caricatures, and different spell effects impact all of the characters. While it at times does have a Disgaea look, it's certainly its own, with a very colorful overall cartoony worldview. While the creature and character designs are uniformly good, I would have been very happy to see more animations for, well, pretty much everyone and everything on screen, but as a budget title, I think it's not really that unacceptable. Now, I have to say, I loved a couple of the creature designs, and surprisingly enough, they were the basic creatures, like the skeleton and his topsy-turvy head reminding you of friends you had in high school whose bodies never grew into their enormous melons and can pretty much stretch any hat, or the way the game zooms into a boss to display their arrival. Very cool little bits of graphical impressions here. At first notice, this looks like a budget title, but I think that there's a great deal of work that's been put into it, and you can see that, and it shows throughout the entire presentation, and especially as you move forward. Sound, music, and voice. And of course, sound is up first. Now, it's pretty good, from the sound of your swords bouncing off the faces or enemy maces, or the first time a ram ice creature decides to sprint halfway across the level and smash into you face first. It's all actually pretty good for this kind of game. Now, you might be asking what I mean by that, but when you come to grips with this kind of game, Rogue Wizards is a comedic title in the genre, so creatures, sound effects, and even the environment have a bit of a cartoony resonance to them, and gone is that desire for accuracy, and it's replaced by this tenacious tendency to utilize sounds to offset the lack of, let's say, the close-up view, a lot of detail, or incredible animations. Now, that's okay, because it all actually works really well here to lend an atmosphere to what you're experiencing. So I would say, as a package, this is pretty good sound. Music. Okay, you know what? It's moody stuff with one track replicating what sounds like a massive heart beating in a dungeon that goes through beat patterns and music sort of encircling it and wrapping around it. It's good use of music in that fashion, and it's suitably fantasy-based, but it lacks that big orchestra feel and instead sort of concentrates on a couple instruments per track and an overall moody theme throughout. It's very good stuff for what they're trying, but it can get a little bit repetitive. Voice. None, so let's move on. Gameplay. So you start out as an unnamed warrior who you then immediately name. You run through a short tutorial where you're sort of deciding how you're going to go about combat and getting a feel for it, and then you're thrown headlong into a story about evil wizards taking over lands and how you're the only one who can save everything. And that pretty much begins the main part. Now, there is a town building element, which I'll get to in a moment. The major parts of the game, though, are based in dungeon delving through randomly created dungeons. To me, there's a lot of excellence in the execution of where Rogue Wizards is there trying to have a steadfast adherence to less is more. Instead of hundreds of rooms, even the higher level spaces are still widely spread spread out and connected via various paths with some choke points to end enemies on your sort of bleeding things out +3, or huge open pathways where enemies will shoot eggs out of their bodies to land behind you only to hatch more evilly, constantly pregnant creatures in a couple turns. It's just really excellent level design, and it removes the madness you feel when you enter a maze and you look around and go, who in the hell built this place? Because in the end, you couldn't leave it or enter it even if you wanted to. Instead, what this game does is offer you a light adventure and then funnels you straight into combat. And constant battle is what happens here. As the world draws in and out around you and behind you, you end up finding enemies and go into turn-based attack mode. And from then on, you can attack with melee, ranged, or magic weapons. Now, while melee takes no energy, it does require you to get face-to-face with horribly stinking breath beaks of bad guys, while ranged and magic use either ammo or magic reagents. This tit for tat is just complex enough to keep you thinking, but not so complex that you don't want to engage in it. One of the things I really liked is switching out weapons is as easy as basically taking off a turn and switching to whatever you want to use. Now, of course, when you're all fighting, enemies and yourself can use all manner of randomly generated weaponry that you can also sell, upgrade, put runes in, or switch out during battle, as I said before. Additionally, some spells do environmental effects like fire or ice, with ice eliciting a chance of sliding around the battlefield. Now, this creates a dynamic feel to the battles, which on one hand was really fun and also used against me excellently by the enemies. Also, their ability to pattern really good groups of different enemies that have synergy was awesome, and I can't quite tell if it's random or not. Birds laying out eggs behind you is already worrisome, but add in some ice to the equation and just getting to the egg to smash it before it hatches another ostrich of ever-killing was almost difficult, if not impossible. Great strategy requirements, and I really love that mix-up of enemies. Now, with all this killing, you get loot and experience, and then you go back to town, which is upgraded as you level up. That's the town. It's just basically built around you. You can also go in and level up the workers in some locations using special items and sometimes some money to do so. That would include things like the forge or somebody who makes armor. If you do increase their level, they'll have better stuff that they can carry and sell anyway. Now, you can upgrade weapons, you can further the story, and in what has to be the first example of a bad day barometer, along the bottom of the screen, you can see how far you've gone in the story by filling in colored runes of magic that basically indicate who you've killed and how far you are. I actually really liked it, but it was a little bit odd. Now, when you level up, it's insanely simple. You have 3 stats, each impacting things like health, strength, or defense, and every time you go up a level, you raise them. You can also get more spells than your starting ones, and some are cool, like the ability to teleport everyone somewhere and get a bit of healing during battle, or ice spells to freeze the enemies, as I said before, or fire ones to, of course, burn them. Now, when it comes down to it, understanding all of the elemental bonuses and resistances that the characters have is very, very vital. It's something you will be watching. When you break this all down, the gameplay loop here is the diving down into dungeons and engaging with a series of enemies. It's not only the go down, kill stuff, come back up a revolving door that we've seen in gameplay, though that's a great deal of it. But in fact, it's the strategies, the battles, and the learned and rejiggered tactics you're going to have. When I learned I could retreat and some monsters wouldn't follow, and I paid for that safety with losing sight of them, I was okay with that. I simply adjusted my tactic and retreated to areas where I could keep one enemy or perhaps a trap on my side and destroy it and then rush back in. If they rushed me, I learned that environmental spells did a tremendous job mixed with ranged weapons. It's all basic stuff, but the fact that it's not too complex for its own rule set helps a great deal for you to basically just engage in this somewhat shallow title and not really feel like you're missing very much. Also, it handles in-game a bit different, I think, than we're used to, taking your character's level and score into account and basically placing them in a hall of heroes when you win. Now, you can replay the game and try to beat that, and the score is a combination of level, gold, acquired kills, items picked up, and steps taken. Since you do level up, you really can't grind forever in locations either, as it becomes useless if you out-level those locations. So it's an interesting premise. Now, there's also a Gauntlet Mode, which is just dungeon after dungeon after dungeon, getting harder and harder with only one life, for those of you that think futile means fun. All kidding aside, though, I know a ton of people actually like that kind of stuff, and it's here in spades. Fun factor. You know, I really enjoyed it. It's not one of the best games in the world, but it is a nice game for its gameplay size and its loop, and it was enjoyable to basically get in, be told what to do, and almost instantly be doing it. Pretty good fun. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating scale. At $14.99, this is a buy, but barely. I think that price might be a little bit high. Now, the reason why it is a buy is because there is an extraordinary amount of actual content here, but I wish that in the game was a little bit different, and I would love to see them do some stuff with the Gauntlet that isn't just you continually going with just one life, but maybe switch it up a bit. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the review. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Remember to check out Reddit, Patreon, and if you want reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with bullshit, stick with ACG. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.